Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. It's everybody's favorite segment on here, the Power Rankings. Before I jump into it, I just want to give a shout out to any new people out there. This is a segment that we do every week. It comes out Sunday after the afternoon games, right when the Sunday night game is about to start. So if this is something you like, make sure to subscribe, like the channel. We're on our way to 1,000 subs, and when I do hit 1,000 subs, I will be giving away a hat of your choice. So make sure you are tuned in for that. Could be less than a month before we hit that. So smash that like, subscribe, and we're gonna jump into it. Going 30 to 1, we're gonna start at the very bottom. A lot of you guys told me that this should be the case, and now I really believe it. They got hit a devastating blow. Louis Roberts going to the DL. It looks like he's dealing with the elbow issue, I think it was, that he had missed half a season for a couple of years ago. So long term, that could be dangerous for the White Sox. I did have a little bit more faith in their starting pitching. They went 0-3 against Detroit. They had a 1-1 split with Atlanta. That's all right, before going 0-4 against Kansas City. So 0-7 in their own division. Rough start. I think they're 6 games back, leading the MLB in terms of being back, and one of those teams lost 9 in a row. Number 29, not last for the whole season, so at least I think that is a little bit of something to be excited about. Sure, the A's are still not great. 1-3 against Cleveland. They get swept by Boston, but they did pick up a couple of wins against Detroit this weekend. At the very least, when you're comparing them with the Chicago White Sox, I think they're a little bit better. Their prospects seem a lot better. They got someone like Blackburn, a dealer, on the mound, so they do have some things going for them. We talked about it in another video earlier this week. Moving to Sacramento, a lot of it up in the air, but at the least, the future looks somewhat brighter for Oakland this year than maybe last year. Next up, number 28, this team feels like it's been in the basement for 3 seasons now, and I think this is our 5th season doing this. So they went 1-3 against Arizona, got swept by the Cubs, picked up 1 win against Tampa Bay on the weekend. So just overall, not a great start. Maybe we didn't expect that much from the Rockies coming in. Their rotation, giving up a ton of runs. We saw in the first game of the season against Arizona, giving up 16. And guys, when you're in this division like the National League West, you can't fall behind the 8 ball like the Rockies. We're probably going to see the Rockies in the bottom all season long. Number 27, they've been somewhat of a staple. Strasburg announced he retired today. Not relevant at all to this team right now. But yeah, they're still kind of rebuilding from that World Series run that Strasburg was a part of, right? It's been a long road, going 1-2 against Cincinnati, 1-2 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against I have the Phillies too, right? So that they lose all their games. They don't get swept, so there's a little bit of something there. They're at least not going on a long losing streak, which I think is going to say these teams below them are more likely. We might see them move up a little bit, but it's been a somewhat slow start for the Washington Nationals, and we don't have a lot of hope for them going too far. One team that their hope was a lot higher coming into the season, probably one of the biggest drops on the power rankings. We have the Miami Marlins. They went 0-9 to start the season. Swept by the Pirates, swept by the Angels, which is not super pretty, and then they're on their way to being swept by the Cardinals. Luckily picked up their first win today. So they break the 9-game losing streak. They don't get the 10-game losing streak, so that's at least good, but there's been some rough injuries for the Marlins, right? Their top prospect going down with an injury, Tommy John, he's not going to be joining them. Alcantara is still not a part of it. Seems like they're getting way behind the 8 ball. I still think overall they're probably better than the Nationals, but at this point they're just trying to stay out of the bottom row. Number 25, making a little bit of a step forward. We saw some moments of the Angels of maybe they're going to be better than I thought coming in the season, but I'm still not ready to be sold because it wasn't like amazing start of the season. 1-2 against Baltimore. They had the sweep against the Marlins. We already talked about that, so I'm not going to put a lot of weight into that. And then this weekend, they only pick up the 1 run again, or the 1 win against Boston. So Boston was on a tail end of a long road trip. They only get the 1 win, and it was a 2-1 win yesterday. So the Angels still have a lot of work to do. We kind of came into the season expecting them to be near the bottom. Will they be able to stay ahead of the A's? I think so, but I don't know how high their peak really can be. I think this is a good idea of where they should be right now. Next up, we have the New York Mets, and I know Mets fans probably were hoping for a better start to the season. Maybe this doesn't come as too much of a surprise, but the early start, 0-4 to start, they got swept by the Milwaukee Brewers, a team that was having a little bit of changes themselves. That didn't go over so well. They do manage to break the losing streak against Detroit, taking one game out of the three there. And then they win their first series this weekend against Cincinnati, which I think is a big jump in the right direction. Lindor, off to a historically bad start, got a little bit of heat going today. So a little bit of excitement. Ending the week on a high. I think this is the absolute low we're going to see the Mets. If anything, they can build off this weekend. We're going to start seeing them go up. But playoffs, that's a long conversation away if you're a Mets fan. Number 23, we got the Detroit Tigers. I wasn't really ready to move them up too much. They got off to a kick-ass start, sweeping the White Sox, right? And then they kind of get to beat up on the Mets, who are still trying to find out their own way. But then this weekend, they do lose the series, and it's not really a team you want to be losing about if you're trying to take a step forward as a franchise. Losing 2 games to the Oakland A's is not going to be the way to do it. So Detroit's still trying to find that depth, being able to build some strength, momentum, definitely against weaker teams. This is a young team. You're going to have to figure this out. It's a long season. Maybe this is just some early stepping stones. We'll see what Detroit brings going ahead. Number 22, I'm probably rating them too low, but they lost the first 2 series, 1-2, against Minnesota, against Baltimore. Both of those series, they had chances. Definitely against Baltimore, they were up. They blew a 9th inning game. Their starting rotation has been electric. They just haven't been able to piece it all together, but I think Kansas City is going to be moving up. It's going to maybe be a little bit of a stumble here. Early on, there's a lot of teams. We're going to be talking basically from 23 as much to 8. You could argue that these records are so close. We've only seen certain teams a few times. Some teams have only played bad teams. Some teams have only played good teams. So, sorting through the weeds is going to be a little tough early. Kansas City, young. They've been in this bottom row for 2 years straight. This might be their highest ranking in 2.5 years. I can't even recall, but they're on their way, and I'm excited watching this young Kansas City team. Number 21, I think I might have oversold these guys early in the season. 1-3 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against the Padres, and 2-1 against the Marlins. So a tough matchup to start the season. They get kind of beat up by the Dodgers, and that's going to be a playoff team that you're going to have to learn to play baseball against. The depth of the Cardinals managed to squeeze out 2 wins going forward. I want to see a little bit more of the Cardinals. I'm a little concerned that we're going to see a lot of what we saw last year, so I did maybe punish them a bit much on the rankings, but I'm a little bit more optimistic against some of these other teams going forward. Like number 20, one of the hotter teams starting, Cleveland 3-1 against Oakland, 2-1 against Seattle, and then a 2-0 against Minnesota with a 1 postponed going on today. A little bit of knock here with Bieber going down this week. That was a big start. He was a big part of 2 of their wins already. Are they going to be able to be a competitive team? Yes, but are they going to be able to be that team that pushes to the playoffs without this ace on the mound? I'm not so sure now. It's a big, big hit, of course, for Cleveland. Big 2 games against Minnesota that they did steal over this weekend, so that does impact. I did say at the beginning Minnesota would likely run away with this, but it's been an interesting start, that's for sure. Number 19, one of the tougher schedules in terms of fatigue to get started. They had a West Coast trip to kick off the season, 2-2 against Seattle. They swept Oakland, and then they went into the Angels and won 2-1. So pretty hot start. If you had to say they're coming back from the West Coast with a winning record, you kind of expect it because you had Oakland and LA in there, 2 bottom row teams. But a nice chop with Seattle as well puts a little bit of a cherry on the Boston road trip. So they're in a great spot right now. I don't really see them going lower on this power ranking for the rest of the season. They're in a very competitive American League East. They might even be better than some of the other teams that we haven't talked about yet, but I'm just ready to see them play some of these East Coast. I want to see them play some division matchups, whereas some of these other teams already have. Number 18, we got the San Francisco Giants, 2-2 against Padres, get swept by the Dodgers, and then they play the Padres again and they win that series. So really, I have them below the Padres. Maybe you could argue they're better because they've won games 4-3. It's so close at this point. I still think Padres are slightly better. But Giants, they're in the hunt. They made a trade. Bart left the Giants this week. And I don't have much to say. I didn't watch a whole lot of them, honestly. 17, I got Cincinnati Reds. I still think they're kind of trying to figure out who they are going to be this season. Started off well, 2-1 against Washington, 2-1 against Philly, and then 1-2 against the Mets. So it's just like, it's kind of what I don't want to see. It's like setting up their way to be a 500 season, slightly winning, slightly losing. This needs to be some sort of consistency. Are we going to see the kind of win streak we saw last year with the Reds? Are we going to see them take that step forward? Some of their bats have been extremely hot so far to start, but to try to not beat the Mets in this series here kind of holds me back a bit because it's a team that was struggling. You want to be able to pounce, definitely in baseball, long season on teams that are struggling. Next up, I do have the Padres that I talked about. They do have a couple extra games because they started in Korea, right? So a little bit of fatigue I would have addressed in that 2-2 series to the Giants. Padres then go on to go 1-2 against the Cardinals, which really is something I'm really hurting. I did have the Padres like up here, so I did try to punch them. Don't try to move people down like two massive rows, but if you put up another week like we just saw with the Padres, we're gonna see them down here. I'm not gonna be on them like I was last year. I'm gonna sell them pretty quick this season. Number 15, one of the best starts in the MLB right now. They started off 4-0 against the Marlins. Just a great start. 2-1 against Washington, so they're playing the two worst teams, really, maybe, in the National League. And then they have a massive series win this weekend. Two coming down right to the wire, 9th inning, 10th inning wins against Baltimore. So that was a big boost. Of course, you don't want to win those tight games. You want to start showing some dominance, but it's a big home win for the Pirates. I am having them middle of the league, trending up. I think this is probably the highest start to a season the Pirates have ever had. A lot of promise going for it. Number 14, I got the Blue Jays, and arguably a little too high. They had one of the most disastrous series of their lives against Houston right there in the middle of the week. Lowest batting average they've had in a whole series. Lowest batting average they had over the first 7 games of a MLB season. They kind of tried to redeem themselves winning the first game against the Yankees before getting smashed again. Past 2 games, almost having to come back, but Jays not off to a great start. 2-2 against Tampa, 1-2 against Houston, and then 1-2 against the Yankees. And guys, it's not, they're playing. They have, as talked about already, Boston had one of the toughest schedules to start. I believe the Jays had the toughest schedule to start. Tampa, Houston, New York, all on the road before heading home to their new round stadium. It's going to see how they play at home. It could be right where they belong. Next up, we have the Rays. Kind of just talked about them with the Jays. Nice 2-2 start. They win the series again this weekend against Colorado. And right there in the middle, they do lose to Texas, but they do manage to steal 1 win there. So Tampa's kind of just plugging along. They always tend to go under the radar for most people. And for me, right now they're not in last in the division, which I thought might be the case heading into this season. But they looked pretty good against the Jays, so I do give them the credit there now to be ahead of them. Next up, number 12, possibly one of the hottest starts in the MLB. The Chicago Cubs just got off to a 2-1 series win over the Dodgers. The last game's technically in a delay, but they're up 6-0, so I'm counting it as a win, which I maybe not, but if you're watching this later and they lose, that's what happened. And they also went 3-0 against the Colorado Rockies and 1-2 against the Texas. So they sweep the team that they should, and then steal 1 against the ex-World Series champs. So big start for them, playing some tough teams, and their Japanese stars are being stars right now. Cubs, a lot of excitement here. This Central in the National League is going to be one to watch. Number 11, I got the Seattle Mariners, 2-2 against Boston, 1-2 against Cleveland, 1-2 against Milwaukee. And now they play the Jays, so if they lose this next series, there'll be 3 series in a row that they lost. And like I said before, it's so tight here that if you lose 4 series in a row, you're going to drop right down. And that's what Seattle is risking right now. I think their starting pitching had a little bit of a struggle going forward. You got to see a couple starts from some of these starters to see which ones are outliers, or is that going to be consistent going forward? So that's kind of where I'm at with Seattle. I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt to start, and we're keeping them there. Number 10, Minnesota Twins. They're off to a not expected start for me. I really talked about it in my division previews, how I thought they were going to be the team to win this division, hands down. But after watching about 10 games of each team, I'm starting to realize maybe it's not as sure a thing as it looks like on this board. Sure, I have Cleveland, Kansas City, Detroit this far behind, but I've talked about it. They could jump right up. We're going to see 2 weeks. They could all be meeting here. We could have one team here, one team down here. Minnesota, they're walking a fine line. They went 2-1 against Kansas City, 1-1 against Milwaukee, and 0-2 against Cleveland. So they had 2 series that only ended up playing 2 games. So out of all the teams on the board, I think they played the least. So I didn't want to put too much weight into this. We're going to have a big week for them. Keep an eye on what they're going to be like. The rotation, again, they've only, what was that? 7 games? You haven't even gone twice through the rotation. So that's a big part of what these teams are about, right? Number 9, Milwaukee. I think they came out of the season. They're swinging. They're going good, and they look good. 3-0 against the Mets, 1-1 against Minnesota, and 2-1 against Seattle. So they're beating teams that are supposed to be in scrapping. And I have to admit, the pitching's been there. We saw some exciting offense from them this week, and Churio looks like he's fitting right into this team, and he's hitting the ground running. So at this point, I believe Milwaukee to be the favorite in this division from what I've seen so far. Of course, the Cubs are right on their tail, but this is a tight division. It's probably going to be the most exciting of the season. Number 8, dropping a few spots. We got Houston, 0-4 start against the Yankees was not ideal, but they did bounce back with a nice no-hitter against the Blue Jays. They lose a sick game in that one, as well as that series of 2-1, where they should have really won it, so they should have swept the Jays. And this weekend, they're playing Texas. Down 0-2, they play the Sunday nighter, trying to avoid the sweep. But guys, Houston has a lot of pitching injuries that they're dealing with. Their bullpen has been atrocious, and it's been 10 games. This offense, they're going to be all right. I think Houston's going to be all right. Players are going to start to come back. The bullpen's going to sort its thing. I think this is just a little stumbling block to start the season for the Astros. Number 7, I have the Arizona Diamondbacks. And they started off massive. That 16-run game to start the season was huge. They beat 3-1 in Colorado. And then 1-2 against the Yankees and 0-3 against Atlanta. So, sure, they made it to the World Series. But are they really going to be able to repeat that? I'm not so sure. The rotation is something I'm super excited about to watch this season. Probably the best in the league. But to go against the Yankees and Atlanta, they went 1-5. Not exactly ideal to be in the top row. Next up, number 6, we got the Philadelphia Phillies. They didn't have a great start, 1-2 against Atlanta, 1-2 against Cincinnati, and they finally starting to turn it around against Washington, a team they should beat. They haven't got swept. They haven't found a sweep. It's early. I'm kind of thinking it's April blues for Philly. I do still think they are a top team, so that's kind of why I kept them there. Number 5, moving up a bunch of spots. They're looking good. The Yankees, of course, their firepower against the weekend over here against the Blue Jays looked awesome. The top of the lineup is absolutely deadly, and they've got off to an awesome start, beating 1-2 all teams in the top half of the power rankings. Good start for the Yankees. Arizona beat them. Houston swept them. Jays beat them pretty badly, I would say. So the Yankees are on pace, and they're going to be in an epic fight. I think Baltimore is slightly ahead of them, and this is kind of my reasoning. I do think the rotation and the bullpen of the Yankees isn't quite as strong. We did see some struggling from the O's in that department as well, but they should have the edge a little bit. They definitely have the edge when you're looking at the farm. The farm of the O's is just absolutely destroying, so I think in a long-term power ranking setting, the O's do have the slight edge. These guys are setting up for an epic battle for all season long. Number 3, I'm leaving them up there. They're top in the AL, and they proved time and time again. Even though Jung went down with an injury this past week, he'll be out for a little while. Texas dealing with injuries in the rotation. Evaldi has been great. The team has just found ways to win. 2-1 against the Cubs, 2-1 against Tampa, and 2-0 so far against Houston. Again, playing tonight. Texas is finding ways to win, and that's what a championship team does. And if they can keep that up, they'll be on their way there again. I like them there. Number 2. We have the Dodgers going pretty good, and they had a little bit of stumbling here against the Cubs over the weekend. But, guys, their offense has been great. We've seen some sick pitching out of their new stud, Yamamoto. He had a great outing just recently, picking up his first win as a Dodger. Ohtani, he's been hitting the ball, starting to come around this past week as well. Dodgers are very much the powerhouse in the National League. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And number 1, maybe potentially a bigger powerhouse in the National League, we do have the Atlanta Braves, guys. These guys went 2-1 against Philly, 1-1 against White Sox, and they swept number 7, Arizona Diamondbacks. They're just a well-rounded team. You see their bottom of the rotation hitting for bombs. The one thing I do have a little concern, Max Fried in his 2 outings did not look good, but at the same time, you have Chris Sale making a massive comeback for them. So it's like one guy's doing poorly, and they bring in this new guy, Chris Sale, still manages to fill the role. Braves are the team that I think most people are chasing on this board. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps the channel grow, and I'm really trying to hit that 1,000 maybe by the end of the month. Be great for the giveaway and stuff like that. But let me know what you guys think. Where would you rank? Where am I completely out to lunch? I look forward. It's really the reason I do this is to hear from you guys. So thanks for watching. Peace out.